recording.
You're started. Go for it.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town Board's work session for Tuesday, March 9th, 2021. Can I get a motion from the board to open up the work session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the first item on our agenda this evening is our quarterly financial review, and we have with us this evening our controller and deputy town administrator, Rob Deary. Rob?
Hi, good evening. Thank you, everyone. Let me share my screen here. Does everyone see that? Did I do that correctly? Okay. So I'm going to cover a few different things tonight. First thing that I'm going to go through is a review of the selected 2020 revenue and expense categories. These are things we've been tracking since last April when the pandemic first hit, and we kind of identified some on the revenue side, some categories that might be potential real misses versus our budget, and on the expense side, some opportunities to save money to try to offset the revenues. So if you look at the screen, I've got the original budget, then where I kind of was throughout the year from April, September, November, and year end, and then the variance to the budget. I would say the majority of these revenue forecasts, most of these numbers are solid at this point. We haven't quite closed out the year. Our audit starts in about 2 weeks. We still have a few minor changes, and the auditors usually make a couple changes. So I never give an exact fund balance number at this point, but I typically project whether we'll see a surplus or a deficit. So in tracking some of these categories, going from the top down, property tax penalties and interest, that one came in. We weren't sure how tax collections were going to go throughout the year, so we thought maybe at the beginning of the pandemic, we thought we might fall short of budget. Once we got to September and saw how the collections were going, we're actually, I think, less than 0.1% behind last year at this point. So that category ended the year at $486,000, actually about $86,000 over budget. That was because we had a couple of seriously delinquent properties that paid off the liens. So it was our normal volume is about 400,000, and then we had a couple of delinquent properties that added that total and pushed us over the top. The next one down was the county sales tax, and that was really that was going to be the make or break number for us for the year. When in April, when everything was shut down, the county was kind of giving us dire forecasts of how much money they were collecting and anticipating. And if you go back when we created the 2020 budget in 2019, the county at that point had just added a 1% sales tax, and they kind of gave us an estimate of where they thought we would be. And my budgeting on the conservative, pessimistic side, obviously, no way I could foresee the pandemic, but I was really on the low end or even below what the county thought we would get. So ultimately, once we opened everything back up, and you see where we came in at the end of the year, 3.6 million, so about 341,000 over budget ultimately. So that was a pleasant surprise for us. Commuter parking, that was one that never did rebound. If you look all the way across, we were holding out hope throughout the year. If you remember, beginning of April, we were hoping to kind of close down for 2 weeks and reopen, and we thought we might get back to commuting, and we pushed it back to June, and then July, and September, and December, and ultimately we got very little revenue out of commuter parking. We did for 2020, we did start renewals on December 15th. Actually, we began them on December 15th. We were taking money before that. We only ended the year with about $60,000 there and close to a $900,000 deficit on that one revenue source. Kind of related to that, our parking meters. Those are for the people that typically don't maybe commute 5 days a week, but use the commuter a lot nonetheless. We usually see about $200,000 worth of revenue in a year. That number really didn't climb much, and we ended up the year about $44,000. So another pretty big hit. Summer camps, if you look at the beginning of April, we thought maybe we weren't going to run them at all. We ended up running them in a very limited capacity. We didn't have the travel camps. We limited capacity, but it was a great opportunity to be able to put this program on for our residents. I know they really appreciated it. We did fall well short of our budget goal, but I will say that on the expense side also, since we weren't running a lot of those programs, we didn't spend that money either for the on-the-go camps, the busing, the baseball games, the water parks, those types of things. We didn't have that coordinating expense. Rec programs overall, as you see, that was a moving target throughout the year, and we ended the year about $339,000 down. One of the big hits to that, and why we thought throughout the year that we might have a little bit better numbers, we thought we might be able to run the basketball program, and that just did not happen this year indoors at the school. So that's a significant revenue source in our winter programs. Interest earnings, another one we did okay with that. We still have a decent amount of money in the bank. The problem with that is the interest rates dropped off completely with the decline in the economy over the years. So we saw about a $23,000 drop there. We were pleasantly surprised with the building permits. I will say the development department's done an amazing job throughout all of this. Dating back to April when we kind of shut down and we're operating on a skeleton staff, that whole staff has been operating the whole time, kind of staggered schedules, flex schedules, some of them coming in at night, the rest of them working at home. We were able to have a very respectable revenues stream there, about $897,000. We were only about $52,000 off from the budget. So that was also good news. Fines and forfeited bail. The courts were shut down completely for about 3 or 4 months. When they did open, obviously we weren't writing many parking tickets, speeding tickets. The traffic volume on the Taconic was down, throughout town was down. So that's where we saw a big drop there. Another pleasant surprise, somewhat like the county sales tax, was the mortgage tax. And I think we've all seen that. Anybody in town, anybody that's knows real estate agents or anybody in that type of business can report that home sales from about the middle of the year on have been really strong. And that translated into a really big bump in the second installment of our mortgage tax, pushed us to almost $1.3 million total. The state aid, we weren't certain at one point whether or not the state was going to issue this money. They ultimately did, and to the full tune of $86,471, which is what we expect each year. So that was unchanged from the budget. And workers' comp dividend. Our results with our workers' comp carrier have continued to improve each and every year, which has resulted in lower premiums. Not just that, starting about 3 years ago, I think 2 years ago, this was the third installment that we've received a dividend based on the safety group's results. And for the general fund, that resulted in about $42,000 worth of revenue. So if you just look all the way across the bottom, where the budget was, where we kind of thought we might be in April, and how that number progressed, I think in spite of everything, we still had a great year revenue-wise, but a great year translated into about $1.1 million hole on the revenue side. So we definitely had some work to make up on the expense side. May not go into these quite as in depth as the revenue sources, but these are the expenses that we were tracking throughout the year. The personnel changes, I'll highlight one of the big ones, the police overtime, as you can see, is about $92,000 below budget. That was great job by the police chief. I think we were definitely able to maintain our services and provide everything the town needed and not having to use all that overtime. And throughout the building, we did have scattered. We reduced the part-time staff, and we had a couple of positions that we withheld hiring. We kind of left them vacant for a couple months in order to gain some savings there. The next category you look are the camps and the recreation money. And as I mentioned before, the camps, if we didn't run the programs, we didn't spend the money. So we saved about $184,000 there versus budget. The Art Center, unfortunately, was shut down for a significant portion of the year. So corresponding also to that revenue source, we didn't have to pay the instructors. And that was savings of about $50,000. And the co-sponsored programs, those are where outside vendors, we contract with outside vendors to run programs on our rec fields, and we get a profit share of that. And obviously those numbers were down too. The next category was the town board. And in response to the pandemic, we kind of, the board has a couple of lines that they can use for outside consultants and master plan consulting and special projects, and kind of along the theme that the entire town was saving money, the board kind of held back on spending these funds and help contribute to the results for the year. A little bit of savings from the assessor's office. We did have a software upgrade that got pushed from 2020 to 2021, and we're actually now going to push it into the capital projects. So we saw savings of about $32,000 there. And property tax refunds, I have to say, our assessor does a great job for us there. And we budget $100,000. The 10 years I've been making budgets, we put $100,000 in each year. We've had a couple of years that we've gone over because we've had some rather large settlements. Typically, the number is far less than $100,000. We did, I think, bump that $50,000 in 2021 with anticipation of the golf course certiaries that are out there. Just the last couple ones, parking contractual services. A lot of that is credit card fees that we pay for the Luke machine, and fees for the parking permits online. Obviously, the parking was far reduced, so those fees were significantly less than normal. And the contingency, I haven't completed all of the budget transfers for the final closing out of the year. The contingency most likely will not need to be used. As I go through another slide, you'll see we were well under expense budget for the year. That was the general fund. We were also tracking a few things in the highway fund. The top revenue line, we were unsure of where we were going to be with our state aid, our CHIPS money. And that actually consists of three sources. That's the CHIPS funding for the highway road paving reimbursement. And each year, depending on the state's budget, we get money for extreme winter recovery and Pave New York programs. I think ultimately that number was close to 300,000. We did see a reduction. The state ended up paying out 80% of what we would have seen, but that still ended up being over what our normal budget was by about $30,000. And want to knock on wood, my excitement over the bottom part has been tempered by the difficult winter we've had over the last couple of weeks. But a year ago at this time, we were sitting pretty with our snow removal costs, both salt, snow plowing overtime, road. Those numbers came in with, you see those combined over $300,000 savings. Road paving, we were slightly under the budget by about $33,000, and kind of offset, we did have some highway overtime that went over. A lot of that was related to ESIAS over the summer. So just summarize, this is the general and highway funds, and these are the sources that we were tracking throughout the year. So if you look on the bottom, kind of where we were, when you combine the two, in April, we thought we might be as much of a deficit as 1.6 million. The numbers got better as we went through, and as of now, through these revenue sources, I project about a $200,000 addition, a surplus, as opposed to a deficit. I will show the total general and highway funds. These, again, were just selected sources. But does anybody have any questions or comments on these revenue and expense sources we have been tracking since the beginning of the pandemic?
I'm just hoping that when we get to the discussion of Q1, maybe that would be the appropriate time to talk about the commuter parking projections and what's going on there, and whether, that $60,000 that we realized in Q4, whether we've seen any additional sales in Q1 of 2021, and how we might need to right now start amending our projections for this coming year.
So we haven't really done that, but because we shifted the renewals to December, we don't expect any. We didn't get much of a bump. We were hoping that there might be some carryover, but I think that the city's still pretty closed up, and I don't think we have a lot of people commuting. So we did reduce that number overall to from I think 950 or 975, which was our typical budget, down to about 500,000 in 2021. And that's money we expect to realize in November and December. So I think at this point, we're still optimistic that we'll see that money.
Okay, got it. But so the bulk of that is meant to be realized at the end of the year. It's not meant to sort of dribble in during
Yeah.
Got it.
Correct.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And as just you mentioned Isaias, which triggered for me, I haven't asked you in a while. How did the town fare with regard to reimbursement from FEMA with regard to some of the expenses that we incurred related to?
We haven't seen anything from that yet, and that's not atypical. When you go back to Sandy and Irene, I didn't receive the full reimbursement from FEMA for 3 years. So it's not atypical. We saw a small amount. So right now we have 2 FEMA reimbursements open. We have one that had to do with the COVID supplies, and we saw a minimal amount. I off the top of my head, I don't recall, but it was less than 20,000 that we've seen so far. But we do have additional monies outstanding that we submitted for COVID reimbursement and also ESIAs.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so now I'm going to go through the 4 major funds and just in total and take a look at where we stand. Again, right now there are still entries made by the auditors that could swing this actually by $100,000 or more, because they make a final entry for deferred tax payments for what they term as uncollectible taxes. Eventually we'll collect them all, but because it's not within a certain period, they'll make an adjustment there. And typically they make an adjustment to our health insurance. We, because of our involvement in the MEBCO consortium, we have a fund balance there, and depending on the operations of that throughout the year, they will either add to our expense or take from it. So there will still be some changes, but when you look across the top, the top above the first gray shade is our general fund. 22,802, 761 was the original budget for both revenue and expense. As you see, we come in pretty close to the difference I had for the selected revenue categories. We're off by a little over $1 million, but you could see we made pretty good gain as we saved about $1 million, actually about $1.8 million, it looks like, on the expense side. Want to explain the second category there, appropriated fund balance. So when we make the budget, our total revenue source that would make up this 22,802 would consist of all our revenue sources plus the fund balance that we anticipate pulling from savings to balance the budget. And in years past, that money has been allocated. This was for the kind of to offset the capital projects, the money that we borrowed. So you kind of have to look at this. Year end, we ended there, but you've got to add the appropriated fund balance because that was already accounted for. So when you actually make that calculation, the town ends up showing a surplus. So ultimately what that will mean is we won't need to use all of the $650,000 that we allocated to fund balance. So that will have a positive effect on our fund balance.
And that's got to make you feel a little bit better about the decisions we made for 2021, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It does. And you know what, 2021, that was always the worst case scenario as well. So, you know, that was there in case we didn't get the parking money, in case sales tax didn't come back. And I did get an opportunity to see the first couple months of mortgage tax, and it doesn't appear like it slowed down. So we look like we're on pace to hit that mortgage tax goal or exceed that for the year too. So yeah, definitely. I can breathe much easier now. The bottom half of the page is the highway fund. As mentioned, we had very good results there. There was a net surplus overall of about $436,000 at this point. We did appropriate $145,000. It looks like we won't be using any of that fund balance to balance the budget for 2020. So ultimately, that'll probably be a net gain to our fund balance. The next slide is the water and refuse funds. The water fund, I think we heard from, had a lot of curious residents this year, and we had to explain this a couple of times, but you know, we had a banner year for water sales. It was very, very dry. So anybody that had irrigation was using a significant amount of water. And I think we also kind of chalked that up that people were home over the summer. They didn't travel. College kids were home. Everybody was home in the house using the bathroom, using the washing machine, using the shower. So, you know, our revenue numbers bear that out. 9.2 was the gross number. And then when you add the fund balance in, we were about 9.97. So about $300,000 over budget on the revenue side. We did come in close to that number over in the expenditure side. The vast majority of that was the work at the Inningwood pump station that was not budgeted, but was anticipated to be spent out of the expense lines. So in the end, basically, we'll end up using the 755 that we appropriated, but that's been factored in and forecasts in the budget. You'll see my forecast for fund balance, and it was anticipated that we would use that 755. The refuse fund was very close. There are very few sources of revenue there. We were down a little bit, I think, in the compost and mulch, as people typically weren't out and about. Our recycling center operations were a little bit slower than usual, but we did kind of come in under on expenses. I think we did save there on some employee benefits expenses. So we had appropriated $229,000. It would appear that we're not going to use that full 229, probably more like about 137,000, I think, in fund balance. So again, that will have a positive effect on the refuse fund balance. So that wraps up our 2020 totals. We start our audit on March 22nd, and along with the auditors, I prepare what's called the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. That's due out usually early May, and soon after the audit partner comes and we present to the board, and we'll have final audited financial numbers that we'll provide to the board at that point in time. Ivy, you mentioned 2021. We're really early to have any projections. That typically that first quarter I would not report until, you know, April or May, once some of those numbers come in. We've taken in very little cash so far this year, as we haven't started tax collections. So we have, you'll see in my next slide, my cash flow slide, we're a little short on cash at this point, but that'll get boosted up coming up soon. Okay, I just wanted to show the board where we are tax collection wise, and kind of interesting. You know, we figured during the pandemic we had you know, a lot of financial difficulties across the entire country. But we kind of deferred payment over the summer for taxes. We allowed payment without penalty for a certain period of time and reduced penalties. And just to see, what effect that would have on our cash flow throughout the year. And the top section are the town and county taxes, and these are numbers as of 1/31. If you look, 2019 versus 2020, we're 0.07% off of what we had last year. So I think that shows you we're pretty strong. Our cash flow situation's strong. We don't have any issues there. And if you look at the school tax, it's exactly the same percent, 98.7. So just to let the board know, our tax collections are strong. We don't seem to have any issues there. We do have significant outstanding liens. The majority of those are related, unfortunately, to one property that we understand is just sold, and we're waiting to be made whole on those taxes. We're hoping to realize those this year.
Rob, do you have a sense of, from your colleagues who you speak to with regard to the tax collection rate, whether that's similar in other municipalities? It strikes me as really unexpected that it would be so close to where it would ordinarily be.
I do. I have to say, in the similar municipalities to us, in a Bedford and a Scarsdale and other municipalities that we kind of compare ourselves to, the numbers are the same. I am hearing there's a drop off in some of the other maybe less affluent communities, maybe like a Peekskill and even an Ossining. But overall, I don't think anybody's in real dire straits. I think that the majority of them are pretty close.
Thanks.
So the last slide that I have for you tonight is just to kind of show you what I look at. It's not really something I've shared with the board before. I probably should. It's something that I do prepare and I do monitor, but it's my overall cash flow projections for the year. And I'm not going to go line by line, and I'll certainly take any questions. But I do go month by month and kind of anticipate how much money comes in, how much money is going out, and just our town, based on our fund balances, we typically have a strong cash flow. And when we mention something like, well, the parking revenue, we shifted that from receiving that typically in June to deferring it now to December. And how does that affect us? As you can see from this chart, it really doesn't. And if you look at the third column over in March, projection at the end of that is going to be about the lowest point we are in the year. And it's just a shade under $20 million in the bank. And that's because we haven't started collecting taxes. So we had the 2021 budget. We've started to spend money and encumber money in the 2021 budget, but we really don't have much money coming in quite yet. We don't obviously have the first quarter sales tax. We don't have the first half mortgage tax, and we haven't started collecting taxes. So you see, you look in April and, that number bumps up and throughout the year. So these are months where we've got this cash laying around and we have that invested. So we kind of maximize our return. We keep that money in, there's kind of two different banks that we use. Signature Bank is one, and there's a pooled investment NY class that's open to municipalities and I think school districts, but municipalities for sure. And those are typically better rates of return than a CD, or if we would have had it just sitting in our checking account. So again, not really anything earth-shattering here, but I just wanted to share, just so you have a comfort level. I'm always watching this. I kind of know what our situation is, and I think it's helpful to show you what I go through. So that's really all I have to present tonight. If anybody has any questions or comments on what I've talked about.
Rob, I have a comment and question, or a combination. You expect to be down about $500,000 in parking. Am I recalling that correctly?
For when? For what time period?
How much do you expect to generate in parking this coming year?
Right, about $500,000. So yeah, pretty close to $500,000 budgeted. But that's been budgeted. That's not a shortfall like we had in 2020. That was anticipated.
You just, right. And then in terms of the parking meters, the 16,000 per month, that's what you're expecting now going forward?
That's,
And what was it before
yeah, that's,
pandemic set in?
I haven't really altered that. Again, this isn't an exact science. That is typically, that was what we received before. Probably one I could have looked at and altered. I did alter the parking permits, but that one I could have altered. I would still say, when we get to year end, probably in the area of $10,000 to $12,000 a month instead of $16,000 a month. But again, for purposes of reviewing the cash flow, it would have a negligible effect.
So Rob, if I remember correctly, you originally forecasted that we were going to be in the hole by like $1.2 million, and we actually ended with, so all these numbers are actualized where we had a surplus of 200. Did I interpret that correctly?
Yeah, so what I did, and those were just for selected sources. If I can go back.
Sorry.
So yeah, these were the projections that I had just based on those selected sources that we had.
Got it.
And then when you come to this sheet, this is where ultimately we have basically about $578,000 surplus.
And so what functionally happens when you move fund balance to the general fund? Do you move it back to fund balance?
Yeah, exactly. You actually won't see it. You won't see it moved. So when we present the financials in May, I guess the total difference between revenue expenses, right, you will see added back into the fund balance. What you'll also see offset in those numbers, though, are whatever we appropriated in 2021, which, I can show you that calculation, that discussion when we have it, but you'll see because we allocated, off the top of my head, I can't think, but I know it was over $1 million this year. We added the additional 700,000.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
You'll see a reduction there, but
Got
and the auditor can help walk through that discussion too when he presents, because there's within the fund balance too, within the general fund, there's 4 different categories, and when I'm citing these numbers, I'm in the general fund, I'm talking about the unassigned fund balance, and that's what we have, kind of the rainy day fund where we could spend on anything we needed to. There's other unassigned fund, there's other assigned fund balances that are allocated towards long-term receivables and those types of things. So, our overall fund balance is even higher than what we report for the unassigned.
Okay. Thanks, Rob.
I have some questions for you, Rob, but I'll ask them offline.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Rob. As always, this was really a highly professional and highly informative presentation. And I know that I speak for not only the whole town board, but residents in this community when we thank you for steering this ship through these really uncharted waters that we are continuing to move through. It's been a huge weight off of my shoulders, at least, to know that you're looking after this and you're doing such a fabulous job on behalf of our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It was really honestly a team effort for everybody this year, from the board to all the department heads. I mean, I think we jumped on it as soon as we could, and I think that really saved us. We knew we were going to have a revenue shortage, And really the only way you can offset that is by cutting expenses, and we were able to do that.
So before we let Rob off the hook, why don't we let him do the water rents and tax liens? Great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, the list was provided, and these are people, the number has been reduced from last week as it typically is. We send notices out and we date them, or we ask that payments be in by March 1st. That typically doesn't happen. So we know we have about a week's worth of leeway. So we did get a big stack of mail in last week that we processed, and I think the number went down by about 12,000. But these are people that have outstanding water bills from prior to October 1st. 180 days or older is what goes on the tax bill. So that's what this list is.
How does it compare to other years, Rob?
It's up, but not significantly. About 10,000 higher than last year, I think it was.
Okay. Thanks.
And I will mention that we offered within the mailer, within that notice, we did offer the governor's proposal for installment payments, and say we had very few take us up on that. So I won't say everybody, but it's not uncommon to see the same name year after year on that list. That they just, it might be easier for them than paying, and it just goes on their taxes. And
Great. Thank you.
Thanks again, Rob.
you're welcome.
Thanks, Rob. The next item on the agenda is the modification of the moratorium area. I see Sabrina's with us. There she is. Sabrina, Nick, help us through this.
Sure, I can start us off. We, at the last work session, we discussed with the town board that the existing moratorium that was extended and currently expires in June, we should revisit it, at least as to the scope of coverage, because there was a discussion at the closing of a public hearing that the rezoning with respect to certain areas would not, at least was not on the board's legislative function. So we determined that as the legislation wouldn't be examining those areas that were fully part of the study area, there's no need for the moratorium. And in fact, law would require that we modify the moratorium. The local law that was adopted at the time of the moratorium provides that you can modify the moratorium by terminating it. And in this case, we prepared a draft resolution that's in your packet that does that with respect to those areas that would no longer be proposed for legislative change, rezoning, that they would be removed from the moratorium. And that's what the resolution does. The resolution recites a lot of whereases to frame the question, but in the last two, it says resolved that the town board lifts the moratorium, except as to those properties depicted in the modified moratorium area. And we've included in the packet a proposed map of that modified moratorium area, which if you like, I can put that up on the screen.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, Nick, if you can just share with on this recording with the public what the moratorium consisted of, what were the parameters of the moratorium?
I can. Let me just share my screen so I'm not doing two things at once, which, there we go. Good. So the moratorium encompasses two things when you say the parameters. One was the study area, which included what is being classified as the downtown hamlet area. And then the second was that it restricted certain new constructions from being performed. It did allow sign, facade renovations, minor alterations. I don't recall, Jeremy, the exact square footage, but it did allow up to a certain area of new construction and modifications to existing buildings. 3,000, thank you.
It was,
So when we say it's a moratorium, it was not a total ban on all construction. It was to preserve the status quo so that while you were doing rezoning, as is typically done in other municipalities, you preserve the status quo, you put the moratorium in effect. But we relaxed those requirements with respect to certain work so that some work could continue and some construction development would be allowed to continue. And what you're doing now is further relaxing those in light of the direction going forward now with the study area. So we would request that the board just take a look at the modified moratorium area I don't know, Sabrina, do you want to walk us through that area?
Sure. On the diagram, on the bottom of the screen is King Street, King Street Hill. The new boundary line is proposed to start just after the first row of lots that front King Street, both Lower King and Upper King. So essentially it starts at the public property, the parking lot, the pocket park, and then travels down, or actually up North Greeley Avenue, and is the same boundary as was previously with the left-hand side or the west side against the train tracks, going all the way to the other side of Bischoff, the north side of Bischoff, and then the east side of North Greeley ending at the forefront of, or at the south side of Bischoff Avenue. So within this study area, there are several public properties that, you know, in the initial map, we had identified them. It's hard to see in this resolution, but we did single them out so you could see how much of this area was public or quasi-public, because in this area you have the post office, you have the Verizon utility building, and you have the pocket park, as I mentioned previously, as well as the town parking lot in this area.
Thanks, Sabrina. And I know that it's a little hard to see this on on the shared screen that we're all looking at right now, but I know that you added in here the square footage.
The size of the lots, yes. So there's the
Correct.
size of the lot, both in acreage and square footage. To give you a sense, these are some of the larger lots within the DGEIS study area. But it gives you that level of detail to understand, you know, what these lots are made of.
And about, did you calculate, I don't know if you did, but how many lots were actually subject to this, even if they were in the moratorium area, that would have qualified under the moratorium in terms of not being able to build?
What do you mean?
So if you're in there's a square footage amount, correct?
No.
The size of the lot.
The give in the current moratorium of 3,000 square feet is if you are reconstructing something up to 3,000 square feet. In this area, the lots are larger than 3,000 square feet.
Correct. But my question.
But that doesn't mean that somebody can't do up to 3,000 square feet of improvement.
Right.
Does that
I think the larger point is that in releasing some of these other properties that are outside of the current, you know, what will be the new modified moratorium area, that some of these properties, if I'm understanding you correctly, Jeremy, some of these properties that are going to be released, in fact, were never of a size that they would have been subject to the moratorium if they had wanted to do improvements upon the
Correct.
properties because they were so small, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The only thing that I would add about this, just to make clear for anybody who might be watching this, I know the town board is aware, but you know, the moratorium area does not necessarily mean that this is the final boundaries of what will be the form-based district. So, you know, we are still going through a process right now of doing, you know, we will be kicking off the process of the FGEIS. And answering all of the substantive questions that have been raised by the public with regard to things like building height and view shed and so on and so forth. And so I know there are still questions with regard to this area. That said, because we don't have the answers to those questions at this time, the boundaries are what the boundaries are for the purposes of the moratorium, not meant to be for the purposes of the ultimate form-based district that will be subject to our zoning legislation. Did I say that correctly, Nick?
Absolutely, yes. And so what we would just be asking for the board, if you're in agreement with the boundary lines as outlined herein, that it would be, doesn't require a public hearing, doesn't require local law, it just requires a vote of the town board to modify the boundary lines as set forth in the resolution in the attached map.
Great.
And that's on your agenda for tonight's discussion and vote.
Perfect. Thanks.
So Ivy, just to clarify that point, the area subject to potential code change could not be larger than the red line designated area, but it potentially could be less.
Oh, no, could still be larger.
Oh.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but the purpose, I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
should say correctly, in theory, it could be larger, but it's not subject to a moratorium.
Right, just to let me try and put it in plain language, if I may. So the moratorium is preventing, it initially was promulgated for all zoning districts in all business retail zoning districts, as well as the planned industrial zoning districts. We are now down, and the moratorium was put in place to prevent somebody from wholesaling, tearing down a building and building something new, because we were considering changing legislation on a much larger scale. Now that the board is set a new direction to reduce the area of the new legislation, we're shrinking the moratorium area because there's less expectation that there will be large changes in the entire area, so somebody won't be caught off guard. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and Sabrina, do you recall how many inquiries or applications you received to do whole tear downs to exceed 3,000 square foot in the preceding 10 years?
One, and it wasn't a whole tear down. It was just for interior renovations that involved changing of doors and windows, and was exceeded the threshold in the moratorium.
Great, thanks. And so the proposed resolution is in the packet for this evening, correct, Nick? And
That
on
is
the
correct,
agenda.
yes. Yes.
Great. Okay.
Thank you, guys. Any more questions for Sabrina? Will we let her go? Okay.
Have a
Great.
good night.
Thanks, Sabrina.
Bye.
I see Mike Wolfenson is here, so why don't we go to the 9/11 Memorial Committee update?
Perfect.
Mike?
Thanks.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Hey, Mike, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. So this will be short and sweet. The committee's met once already, and we have our second meeting scheduled for a couple weeks from Sunday, actually. And our overview is as follows, and I just want to give you guys a heads up as what we're planning. If you think we're not going in the right direction, please let us know. Or if you're okay with the direction we're going, then we will just continue. So one of the things, because it is the 20th anniversary, we thought we'd try to do differently, was try to really get the community involved. So what we've done is we've put together a format and a form where individuals can share their experiences on that day. So the goal is at the end of it to have some sort of a PDF document that talks about how people in town, their experiences, how they reacted, just anything they want to put in about the day, sort of a journal. And we're going to edit that and then have it available. It's nothing that would be printed. It would be a PDF and people can then print it themselves. So that's one thing we're working on. The other thing that we're working on is a field of flags, so that there'll be 2,977 flags sort of up on the hill behind the memorial. And we're working on pricing for that now and trying to get that going. Interestingly enough, one of the people on the Rec Commission has actually a flag guy. So we're going to see what, who knows, people can have that, but he does. So we're going to get a price from him as well, and we're going to move forward from there. We'll also have a couple speakers locked in already. One in particular is Tom Dunn, who did speak a couple of years ago, and the fire people in general really were very excited to have him back, and he's already accepted. The other thing that we're trying to figure out, and this, again, we'll take input from anybody, is should we do it in the morning when it actually happened, like 9 o'clock, or should we wait again to do it in the afternoon? Some people were concerned about it competing with what goes on downtown, but it's been our experience that not a lot of people, at least from our area, are going downtown. And when we spoke to police, fire, and EMS, they seem to be very comfortable with doing it at either time. So that's still sort of a work in progress, and we're trying to figure that out. As far as EMS, fire, and police all working together. They're going to be responsible for the look and feel of how the day will go, as far as where they want to stand, what they sort of want it to look like, where they're going to be. They've had concerns in the past about their placement and everything, so we're just going to let them handle it. That way they complain, they have to complain to themselves about it. So that shouldn't be an issue. The only thing we really need, I think, help with from the town is, one, when and if we do figure out how much money we need for a budget. And again, I don't have any real figures yet, so I don't want to make anything up or even ask for anything, because we don't know what we're going to do about that. But we're hoping that the town will continue to print the program like you guys have done in the past. And we do have a couple things this year we'd like to do a little differently than has been done in the past. We'd like the names of the people that are being memorialized on the program, which we thought was good. We're also speaking to other town members to see if anyone in the community who might have moved in after that day might have lost someone and they want to add their family, so that we can at least give them the courtesy of reading their name that day as well. So we're looking to do that as well. In regards to Jill, if you can either make a call or give me the information for the clergy that normally speaks. And I don't know who you speak to for in the high school to get the taps and the singing, because we certainly want to have music again, because we just really feel that that's really important to the day and so moving. And again, to get the community involved. And the last thing we were working on was speaking with community members. And again, this is all, we're sort of in the early stages, and maybe having community members and kids and Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, whoever, if they want to make flags, and we would also plant them in that field as well, so that we can get people really involved with it. So the goal would be that you'd have an informational journal, which the start of it would be a basically of what happened that day. And I'm actually, because I'm a docent at the 9/11 Museum, I'm actually working with people there, so that's a very succinct timeline of events. So that'll be the start of it. And then we'll go with, the memorial itself is a community response. So we're going to go with what police did, what fire did, what EMS did. We're speaking to previous board members for what the town response was. And then we'll go into the personal journals of people that were in town, either at the time or live in town now. So that's sort of the overview. And again, we're welcome to any feedback or any questions or anything.
I just had two thoughts, Mike. This sounds really wonderful. One question was wondering if you wanted to reach out to the Historical Society to see if they would be interested in this document of testimonial that you guys are assembling as part of our local history.
I see no need as to why we wouldn't do that. So I can do that. And that would be Gray, right?
Yeah, I would think so. He'd be a good start.
It would be Jennifer Plick is the director of the Newcastle Historical Society now. I can email you her contact information.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
No problem.
And then, I guess my one thought about the timing is that we may have people, although they may not be traveling downtown, they may be watching the downtown ceremonies.
It's very possible. And again, that's sort of something that's very fluid. Usually the ceremony itself starts very early, and then it's literally just, 3.5 hours of reading of the names. So it all depends what they're looking for, but I'm more than happy to talk about that further. Maybe our thought was to start between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. And again, that's flexible. So whatever we all decide is fine. Any other questions?
I really
Okay.
want to thank you, Mike, and all of the members of the committee that you've assembled, and you did such a thoughtful job of making sure that we had all the right representatives from the community on the committee, and so I just really appreciate the time and energy that everybody's putting into making this a really special event. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it'll be good, and we're all excited to make it special. And if anyone has any ideas, please email us. There's no egos here. It's just about making it the best day for everybody. And when the memorial was first built, the idea behind it was very simply community and unity. And those were the buzzwords that I used for the years that it took to get it done. And we just want to bring, again, that feeling of community and unity back. So anything we can do to do that, that's the goal. So thanks very much, too. We appreciate it.
Mike, if I could just ask you, do you have a copy of a prior year's program.
I-
Tiffany, can you send a couple of older ones to Mike and let him look at them? Because the easiest thing for us to do is to, take and mark it up. And then we'll
Well, we would
change it.
probably, yeah, we would
accordingly.
probably, if you want to do that, Jill, because I think we would just do the exact same sort of format. The only thing, as I said, that we would do differently is we would just add the names of all the people that we want to remember that day. And other than
Yeah.
that, I think, I mean, that's really all that matters, really. I don't think the name of the people on the committee are important at all. At
Okay.
least, I don't think anyone cares about that. I think it's just making sure the people that we're honoring or and memorializing are mentioned in it. Other than that, I think it's fine.
Yeah, we traditionally have gotten our trumpet players from Chappaqua Orchestra.
Okay.
Basically because it's because school is just starting up after summer break. It's sort of hard to get a commitment from the high schoolers because band and orchestra often haven't started meeting yet. So that's been our challenge. And we've got some residents who have helped us out with the bagpipes. So we've either had, last year, I think for the first time we had Lieutenant Dumser, but he's usually otherwise engaged on that day. But because it was virtual, we were able to have him. But yeah, I'll work out all the other details with you.
Okay, and I'll work also with fire too, because they usually know a bagpiper or two. So they might have
Absolutely.
someone as well.
Sure, absolutely.
Excellent.
Sounds
All right,
good.
thank you
Okay.
so much, everyone.
Thank you. Okay. Bye, Mike.
So long. Thanks again.
Okay. And so the next thing on our agenda is actually authorization to use town property, and it's for a diaper drive. And it's going to be Thursday, March 11th, just for an hour. It's going to be in the back parking lot, whether they want to use the old skateboard park or a little, but in the back vicinity there, so that they're sort of out of the way. I know skateboard park is very popular for little kids riding their bicycles, so I don't want to send them back there if it's going to be populated by tricycles and things like that. So we'll work out the details with them. The next item was the Millwood Lights. If the board recalls, when we agreed to the Millwood Rec Field improvements, we are having the ball field lights professionally installed. But when it came to the parking lot lights and the walkway lights, we're doing that in-house. And this is for the purchase of the actual luminaries, which is $17,112.99. The next item is
Just on that topic, just Jill, I know that I updated you, but just for the rest of the town board, that I had had a conversation with Assemblyman Chris Burdick earlier this week, who indicated that he thought that there may be funding available for the SAM grants to communities. I know
Right.
that we thought it was a little bit of a Hail Mary at the time that we were sort of assembling our requests back in January, and the board discussed some of the items that might be on there, this being one of them, the continued improvements at Millwood Park. So, it looks like there actually may be, and the timeline on that is after the state budget passes, which is, typically the beginning of January.
So with any luck.
Beginning of April. So.
Thank you. I realized I passed over the diagnostic software that Bart uses down at DPW. It's Snap-on ShopKey Pro TruckWork Plus diagnostic software at a cost of $3,299.16. So as the board is aware, the above ground home heating oil tank at the Bedford Road pump station, which is actually next to the pole barn on CCSD property, cracked. There was an ice heave in the containment vessel underneath it, and it caused a crack. There's a spill there. We have been actively cleaning it up, but one of the things that keeps Bart up at night is we have 3 other tanks that have a similar design, and he would like permission to go out to bid to get these replacement. The technology has significantly changed. And now it's a tank within the tank, and it's not like a containment vessel. So you don't have to worry that there's snow and ice that are accumulating that might cause this problem again. So we're going to be asking for authorization to be able to go go out and get them. He figures that in total, it's about $20,000 for the 3 replacements, which seems a small price to pay in order for us to be able to avoid the situation in the future. The good news for us is that insurance will cover it. And we have all of our license agreements with CCSD, and we have a permanent easement to actually run the pump station on the property. So because the area that we had to access was larger than our permanent easement area, we needed a license agreement. We took care of that this weekend. CCSD approved it. We're all set. Sorry, more information than you needed, but all good news. Bart's also looking for a purchase of water storage tanks for about $3,775. Inspection services for the Hudson Hills and Whippoorwill storage tanks. Again, just, Bart got left with a lot of facilities that we have charged him with giving us an accurate assessment of. And so these contracts all represent his affirmative steps in making sure that he can come and talk to the board about what are the current infrastructure projects that we have and what state are they in and how do we plan for the future to be able to keep them operating without having to put out these fires all the time. The next item is the annual ECI Suez contract. So this is a contractual increase that Suez has pursuant to its multi-year contract with us. So we're just asking the board for a ministerial approval of that. There are under drain nozzles as well that Bart needs for maintenance. So I got ahead of myself here. Thanks. Okay, so these are requests to solicit proposals again for the filter media removal by contracted vacuum truck services. A little bit more complicated than I can understand, but they're requesting authorization to purchase these required items for $8,640. Bart's giving this to the board because, again, it's a large ticket item and he wants the board to be aware of, these sort of maintenance items that he needs to purchase every year for the Millwood water treatment plant, but just letting the board know about them this year. In addition, there's the nozzle replacement purchases. Again, above my pay grade, but yeah. Cost per nozzle is $7.50, but there's 1,152 of them per.
I feel like we're putting you through your paces this evening, Jill, with some of our pandemic rules about making all of these things come before the town board.
Yeah.
It does strike me that we're probably getting to the point where we should revisit some of those rules.
And I think everybody would welcome that, but. But you also need a comfort level.
Particularly if the town does wind up getting, some of the COVID relief funding that we believe may be coming our way. That might be the time at which we can think about not needing to ask you about the filter media removal.
You mean
I have to tell you,
we might not get the novels?
And he explains it to me, and it's not that I'm not paying attention, but it's, my capacity to actually retain this and be able to explain it to you is limited. It makes sense when he explains it to me, and then it's gone. So I do believe that that's everything on our work session agenda. Did I miss anything? Does the board have any questions with those items? Okay. Then we are ready to move on to our town board meeting agenda.
Okay.
We need a motion to go into our town board meeting, Nick?
Motion to adjourn the work
So
session. Okay. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the town board meeting for Tuesday, March 9th, 2021. I want to start off with just a couple of quick announcements. I have been holding my supervisor's report for the newsletter in weeks past, but I did just have a couple of quick things that I wanted to move through this evening. The first is with regard to Chappaqua Forward, our form-based code. So last week, the Chappaqua Central School District Board of Education finalized and accepted the results of their independent consultants' analysis of the potential impacts of the proposed form-based code on enrollment, budget, and capacity for the district. The final report, for those who are interested, can be found on the district's website. The final report confirmed the projected draft number of school-age children that could result from the maximum build-out scenario that's in the DGEIS, that is 150 students. The report also acknowledged that the district has lost 689 students since its peak enrollment in 2007. The final report also studied an alternative scenario to the maximum build-out in the DGEIS. That is that the district looked at the potential number of school-age children that would result from more two-bedroom units and fewer one-bedroom units. I wanted to mention this because I want to reassure the community that the town still intends to regulate the unit mix. That is the number of bedrooms that is allowed in the form-based district. So I informed the Board of Education of our intention to do so back on January 21st. And then on January 26th, the town board held a work session, at which point town council presented the board with options for how we could accomplish this goal. So despite our assurances that it was our intention to create regulations in our code that we would produce the housing mix contemplated in the DGEIS, the Board of Education persisted in studying this alternative. At their meeting on Wednesday evening, the Board of Education explained their rationale for doing so, which was that they were unsure whether there was a legal mechanism for the town to be able to regulate the unit mix of bedrooms that would count in our form-based code. So again, I just want to state that there is such a legal mechanism as the town board discussed at our meeting on January 26th. And I've asked town council to prepare some written guidance for us on this matter, which will be posted to our website, chappaqua.org, later this week. So no one is more desirous than I am of setting aside our differences and working collaboratively. And I truly know, based on the comments that the Board of Education made at their meeting last week, that they share this goal. So I just hope that when they send these results to the community, that they'll consider removing this alternative scenario, as it is not what is under consideration at this time. Moving on, with regard to frequently asked questions, I mentioned earlier that town council is preparing some written guidance on this question regarding whether the town can regulate unit mix and bedroom count for the form-based district in our zoning code. Council has actually been hard at work preparing written responses to many FAQs, including a couple we posted. So with regard to the question of what is the new direction that was announced by the town board for the form-based code, and if the town board is limiting the form-based district to North Greeley, why will the FGEIS and the seeker finding statement be completed for the entire study area? Those two FAQs have already been posted. Tomorrow we'll be posting some additional FAQs with regard to the downtown working group and conflicts of interest. These are questions that the community has asked us about, and town council has prepared a response to those. As these FAQs are sort of identified and responses are created by council, I will share them in the e-newsletter, but I also encourage everybody to check out the information that's on our website. So it's chappaqua.org. And truly, I'll say again, it is our goal to be transparent and to be clear in all of our communications. Just one last point with regard to the form-based code before I move on. The public hearing on the DGEIS closed on February 23rd, but the public comment period is still open. So if you would like to send us a comment on the DGEIS or the form-based code, please do so. all of the substantive comments that we received by March 25th at 5 p.m. Will be addressed in writing in the FGEIS. And again, comments can be submitted to chapelforward@mynewcastle.org or public comment at mynewcastle.org. Just a couple of things, non-form-based code related that I wanted to touch on in my supervisor's report, the rest of which will be in the e-newsletter tomorrow. Vaccine eligibility. So many of us were really excited to hear the news today that New York State is significantly expanding eligibility for the COVID vaccine. As of tomorrow, March 10th, New Yorkers age 60 and over are eligible for the vaccine. As of March 17th, government employees, nonprofit workers, and essential building service workers, are eligible. And also, as of March 17th, all providers except pharmacies can vaccinate any eligible New Yorker, and pharmacies will be able to vaccinate 60 plus as well as teachers. With that said, I just wanted to remind Newcastle seniors, which we've sort of broadened the definition of now to include anyone who's 60 and older. If you are looking for a vaccine appointment and you need help navigating the system, please do reach out to the town. We have folks at the community center designated to help assist our local seniors, 60 plus, to find vaccination appointments. And we have folks there Monday through Friday, 9 to 3 p.m. The number for the center is 914-238-8888. And I just want to mention that the county and the state are setting up pop-up vaccination sites. There's one that's going on right now, tomorrow in Yorktown. And it's specifically for seniors. And the only way to get an appointment there is that it needs to be scheduled through your municipality. So again, the number that you can reach out to at the community center, 914-238-8888. And the last thing I wanted to mention, because I've gotten a fair number of questions about it, is the American Rescue Plan, or the COVID relief bill, which is set to be passed this week. This bill will provide significant financial relief to Westchester's local governments. The plan includes $23.8 billion in state and local fiscal aid, including more than $10.8 billion for New York's counties, cities, towns, and villages. The current local aid estimates included in the American Rescue Plan for Newcastle is $1.95 million. However, we are awaiting further guidance from Senator Schumer's office with regard to who administers the funds and what is eligible for the funding. We have learned that the Treasury Department will be sending funding directly to municipalities, and that eligible expenses are not only limited to direct COVID costs, but also include revenue losses due to COVID and sewer, water, or broadband upgrades that were needed due to the pandemic, among other eligible expenses. So as we learn more, obviously the bill has not been signed into law yet. As we learn more, we will continue to share information with the community through the e-newsletter. So that's everything from me. Jill?
Sorry, I've got nothing. Thank you.
Who was going to go? There was something Rob was going to go over.
Wait.
Council has advised us that we are better off introducing a local law, which will be ready next town board. That's the 16th. We'll be introducing it.
Okay. All right. Forgive me just a second. I just have to flip my screen. Oh, okay. So we've come to the portion of the this evening's agenda that is dedicated to public comment and new business. So if there is anyone who is out in our audience who would like to make a comment, please feel free to raise your digital hand. And Pam Thornton from NCCMC will help usher you into the meeting. And I will check, as I always do, with Christina Pates and see whether we've received any public comments.
We have not,
over
no.
in advance of the meeting. And anything on YouTube?
I don't see anything, and no one has their hand raised at this time.
Okay. All right. So then the next item is the consent agenda and moving on to the resolution.
So we just read from the consent agenda items and start
Correct.
that? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I mean,
Page one of the
I didn't know if-
resolution.
I didn't know if we want to go through mention any of the consent agenda items. I'm still a little unsure on how we're doing it, if we're mentioning it first. All right, I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of adoption of monthly reports for February, adoption of minutes, March 2nd, 2021, authorization to appoint Conservation Board, authorization to appoint Conservation Board, authorization to purchase equipment, repair services or the DPW, authorization to establish a capital project, Quaker Street Water Main Improvement Project, authorization to approve annual ECI contractual increase for 2021 contract operations at the Millwood Water Treatment Plant, authorization to solicit proposals for above ground heating oil tanks, authorization to solicit proposals for filter media removal, MWTP, resolution accepting stormwater management facilities maintenance bond.
Second.
Hey, Nick, I just realized I should have asked everybody if they had any items they wanted to move off of the consent agenda, right?
Correct, yes, sorry.
Okay, so I'm sorry, before we take a vote, did anyone want to move any of those items off of the consent agenda and into our regular resolution?
I don't, but I think we might want to just say who the people we are appointing to the Conservation Board are.
Right.
Jill, do you want to do that?
Sure. Tom Curley and Karen Basic.
Second.
So both of those are appointments, though.
Those
not
are the new, right, those are the, oh, I'm sorry.
Should it be reappointment? Reappointment is a mistake. It should be amended to be appointment.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Lauren, unless there are reappointments as well.
There are
Go ahead, Tiffany. I'm sorry, I just don't have it in front of me.
me either.
My email is acting up.
Oh, no.
So if we're on this consent agenda going forward, why wouldn't we, as Lisa just pointed out, to make it easier, why don't we just going forward use people's names? Is there a particular reason why we're not?
No, we should do that. We're learning as we go. So let's do the appointments and let's leave the reappointments for next time.
Okay.
I think I know who they are, but I don't want to guess on it. So, okay, and we'll just put it on for next time. Okay, thanks, guys.
Amended as
Thank you,
to-
Lisa.
Amended as to Ms. Shapiro.
To remove the reappointments and to reflect the names of the individuals being appointed.
One more
Can
time. We'll get it yet. All in favor?
Oh, it was my turn? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Should we press restart?
Consent agenda was gonna save us time?
I move to approve the payment of claims in the amount of $249,616.89, 2020 expenditures totaling $50,120.03, and 2021, $199,488.86, listed on the summary pre-check writing report and detailed voucher detail reports, all dated March 5th, 2021. Checks will be issued and mailed to each claimant, listed on Wednesday, March 10th, 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to adopt the following resolution. May be resolved that the attached schedule for charges for unpaid water for property shown on the tax rolls are hereby fixed and determined by the board and certified to the supervisor of the town of Newcastle, that such amounts are levied against the real property as set forth on the attached schedule of charge for unpaid water, that the same be raised the same be raised by tax upon the real property in the town of Newcastle, liable therefore at the time and in the manner provided by the town law and Westchester County Administrative Code, and that amount of such tax be stated in separate column in the annual tax rolls of the town of Newcastle under a column entitled Water Rents.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You want to take this, Jeremy?
No, I'm handing it off to you, Lauren. You're doing a great job.
I'm probably gonna, bounce this off to Dick. So I move to adopt the following
think so.
resolution to partially lift the moratorium imposed by local law 13 of 2018.
As duly set forth in the resolution in writing, that's before the town board.
And what else do I need to say, Nick?
Yep, nope, that's sufficient. Then we just need a
Okay.
second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to authorize Amanda Garfinkel as well as some fellow Chappaqua families to utilize the train station parking lot by the Washington Avenue exit to run a diaper drive for a local baby bank on Thursday, March 11, 2021 for a 1-hour window.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to authorize the subscription to Snap-on Shopkeep Pro Truck Work Plus diagnostic software for the Department of Public Works Mechanic Shop at the annual cost of $3,299.16.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Lori?
Sure, yeah. Sorry, I'm toggling between scrolling and mute. Okay, I move to authorize the purchase of 4 walkway light poles and 4 LED luminaries and 7 parking light poles with 7 LED luminaries from Graybar Electric Company for the total cost of $17,112.99.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to authorize the purchase of water storage tank inspection services from Atlantic Underwater Services, Inc. for the total estimated cost of $3,775, which will cover structural, sanitary, and coating inspection of the tank's interior and exterior.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to authorize the purchase of filter under drain nozzles from Oviva USA LLC for the total estimated cost of $8,640 for 1,152 units.
Second.
All in favor?
I
Aye.
And there's that last pay it forward resolution that Lauren just sent.
don't have that one. If someone has it in front of them, that would be great.
All right. I move to authorize the use of town property for the Pay It Forward event on Saturday, March 13th, 2021 from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. on Lower King Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Isn't it on more than Lower King Street? I thought we're using the area in front of like Great Stuff too.
No, they have it on
We
Lower
need
King
to
Street.
include that?
Bluestone patio?
No,
Yeah,
it's
but-
only on Lower King.
Yeah.
Good, good.
All right, so is that it?
I think so.
That's it. Okay. Just
That
need a
wasn't our
motion to
best
adjourn.
moment, guys. We had to practice. All right, so I move to adjourn.
Second.